Hi everyone, I'm back for part 2 of the sorting through the buttons that I decided to keep out of that giant hoard that I went through partially with you guys a few videos ago. And first of all, I want to start by saying hi to a couple people. Beautifully 91, thank you for trying my sweet potato pie recipe with your kids. Please tell me how it went. I know that was a while ago, but girl, I didn't forget you. And also Priscilla Reyes, 1644 de Puerto Rico. Hola and gracias. And Joe Childress, 5003, Rambling Row. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Joe Childress, 5003. Let me see. Oh, thank you for the compliment on my Met Gala look. I really appreciated that. That was such an amazing experience. And then I wanted to also say hi to Rambling Row. Yes, Little Milton with some broccoli and cheese grits, that recipe that I did. Girl, yes. And also, it was delicious. I know that was a while ago too. So I just wanted to say hi to a few folks, and if I missed anyone, which I know I did, believe me, I'll catch up with you in the very next video. So hi to all of you, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to continue sorting through these buttons that I kept because people wanted to know what did I keep, and also in some cases why I kept them and what they were. So we're just digging in right now. So as far as diminutive buttons, I love diminutive buttons, and I'm going to be doing a video, another video I should say, because I do have one or two in regards to the various ways that I display the buttons. And I have a couple new methods I'm going to be trying, and some of these will definitely be featured in there. And what is a diminutive button? It is simply a abnormally tiny button. Usually, ladies, you'll know what these are because they're at the top of your dress, at the back of the neck, or your shirt sometimes at the back of the neck. Sometimes they're at the front, but mostly at the back. And sometimes you're sitting there saying this button isn't going to hold anything, but it always seems to do the job. And here you go. And for men, I would relate it to when you have a shirt and some of them have those really tiny buttons near the collar, for example. Those are kind of diminutive. Sometimes they're not truly diminutive, so that's why, I'm saying this sort of loosely for you. But I don't want to leave you guys out either. We do have some dudes that, are our friends and allies here, and they also like to get into this world. If you remember when I found these in that hoard, I was so ecstatic. The reason I was so happy is because purple is really hard to find in vintage antique buttons. You might be able to find them nowadays, and obviously the plastic cheap buttons that they make, not the quality plastic buttons they made back in the day, which I didn't realize were higher quality than anything that will come out in the future. And as you know, once again, I love this type of shank due to the fact that it has a lot of versatility. Ew, let me pick these up. These are like little candies. So that's another thing, like with buttons, please be careful with like your children, your pets and such, because even though obviously they're buttons, they don't taste like anything, but they do look like little bits of candy. And these are a self-shank button. These are from like the 1960s, maybe early 1970s. And probably would have gone on something really fun. I would love to have seen the garment those were on, or maybe they were purchased that way on a card for sale so that home seamstresses could fancy up their things. Oh, this is another one I got super excited about, and I still haven't researched this any further, but so far this looks like it's Bakelite. Yes, as I said in the previous video, I am going to do a Bakelite review. Oh, and also this had the double shank on the back. A Bakelite review video because there was definite confusion. I'm going to say maybe 6 months ago in regards to life happens. My husband was interrupting us as we were going through our valley of buttons. So I talked about in a previous video like natural buttons such as wood ones. Obviously these are made of wood. They're actually called toggles, which it was a version of buttoning, and actually one of the earliest versions of buttonings, or even I guess we'll call it fastening, would have been leather straps or pieces of twine. Obviously things like toggles like this, except for they would not have had the wood metal shank on them. They would have simply, you know, been attached various ways using twine and strings and leather and whatever type of tying mechanisms they could use. But I do like these toggles because they're just so clean. There's some ebonized ones in here, like this one is completely ebonized, and there's some with like this mahogany type wood, which obviously you cannot get mahogany anymore. And as you can see, the variation in the color, I think you can get that in the video, the variation in the colors. And this one is extra long. And these are great. Like if you are making, for example, one of the things I do is create art books and junk journal type things. And so I like to, not all the time, but I would say probably 50% of the time, create like a tying mechanism for the book so that everything kind of stays together. It's sort of, I consider it to be wrapped in love when I, you know, create something that kind of ties or holds the whole book together. And using these toggles is a great idea for that because you can also create danglers out of these and other things. Obviously, you can also use them as intended for clothing. So let's not, I'm sorry, was I in frame? You can use these for clothing as well. So let's not forget that. But those were, I don't keep a lot of those, but those seem to be a little extra special to me. So this is another one that I said I was not going to keep, but as you can see, when I went back and did my final review of the items I was not keeping, I did recover some of these. These are just too freaking cool not to keep. They have that 1950s space age, or 1960s, I'm sorry, 1960s space age jam to them. The color is super deep, like a burgundy or a Bordeaux type wine. And also the thickness is just wild. And of course they have one of my favorite shanks, and also a couple different sizes in here. So I know that, and look at how many there are. And this is just some of them. There were, I'm going to say probably 25 of them that I did not keep. So I just kept this. It actually was just like this. I just kept one of the strands. So you'll definitely see these again. And I believe I recognize this maker. They commonly use a brass, if I could get it in the picture, a brass shank on the back. Can you see? Yeah, you could see that better. So I'm going to look these up. I believe the name of the company begins with an S, as in Sam. So like I said, I haven't had any deep dives into any of this yet. And some of it I won't deep dive. What I'll simply do is add them to the correct categories in my extensive collection, which I was showing my husband a little bit of today, and he's like, my God, I think you have 1 million buttons. It was hilarious. So here are some diminutive buttons made of various materials. We have that pewter one that's like right closest to, actually, where's my pointer? We have this pewter one right here. We have this metal atomic shaped one, so that tells you right away that's like 1960s. Maybe even the latest, late 1950s, but I believe this is more 1960s. We have this Tagoa nut button here, and I just want to flip them over so you can see what the shanks look like. So you have a little bit of a variation on shanks. This one, which was applied somehow. This one, which was definitely applied. And this is actually the top of the Tagoa nut button, which almost had a butterscotchiness to it, but it's definitely not Bakelite. It's definitely Tagoa nut. And I have an entire video out there about Tagoa nut buttons. So always look at the description of my videos, and you'll find the playlist for buttons so that you can go out there and, you know, research, check, enjoy, hopefully. Have a look at some of the things that are in my collection, which is really vast. These olive colored buttons are to cry for. They are so colorful, and I bet you the camera is not doing these justice. Also, they're like so perfectly made. And this, once again, I believe is made by the same company that made these. The company's name begins with an S, and I don't recall what it is without looking it up. But these also have a little bit of like a pearliness on the back of them, which is weird because they definitely don't have a pearliness on the front of them. So, you know, attention to detail, attention to detail. These are 2-hole buttons, as you can see, and they're stunning. The old string is still in there that someone strapped them together with. And did I show these previously? Yeah, we have more of these. These are repeats from the previous video. There were so many of these, and they're so just beautifully made. I had to recover every single one of them for my collection, and once again, I did not research them. And sometimes you sit there asking yourself, you know, the person or persons that previously were the caretakers of these buttons, you just wonder, like, why did they select these? I mean, these might be military or something like that, so obviously there would be no choice. You would have to select these. Or they could be part of some association or something like that. So they have their own logos, insignias, and such. But look at how many of these there are, you guys. And I showed some of these in the previous video as well. And these, which I also showed in the previous video, have different names along this edge right here. And I have to do more research into what organization that was. Hopefully, maybe I can find out something about the people, because obviously those buttons were definitely engraved or embossed or whatever you want to call it, just for those people. And this is another flash from the past that you guys have seen. And there were a lot of these as well, but I just adored them, so I had to recover them. And that is what I call this process. I call it a recovery. And as I stated, I'm going to see if I can get some rhinestones, especially colored ones, down in the center of these. And where somebody had asked me, you know, where do you get your rhinestones? I recover them from broken costume jewelry, mostly, and or in some cases, buttons. So that'll be something that maybe we'll explore together. There's another one of those. And just going through, taking out some of the duplicates. There's another one. Okay, so there was a question that, let me see who asked me this question. See, I have notes for you. So when you guys send me messages and, you know, especially when you leave comments, I 100% pay attention. Let me see. Do do do. Oh, this was from Christine Ann May. So Christine Ann May, I did not forget about you. I did respond back to you months ago on YouTube in the comments. I responded to your comment, and you had a question about this button, which is a knight's head. And you wanted to, and it really isn't a knight's head. It looks like that maybe in the video, but this is actually a Roman head. And this is under the category of coin buttons. This one is made of some sort of alloy silver tone metal and pewter. And this is what the back of it looks like. It is not the oldest button. This button is probably 1970s. It might even be very early 1980s, but I'm pretty sure this came from a 1970s garment. And I want to also show you this button, which is also a coin button, and ironically, Roman in nature. But you can have these coin buttons, and they can be made of any material. Most of them are definitely made of metal, but some might be made of a plastic. But most are made of metal. And they're from various eras, because coin buttons have been a popular thing forever. Because way back in the day, some of the rich folks could afford to have their buttons made out of literal coins. Of course, if you were the King of Spain, for example, or King Henry VIII, who is also an excessive maximalist person, just like King Charles of Spain was, then you would have your buttons made of actual gold. Otherwise, someone might be having head offed. Hopefully not, but they would act. And so in museums, you can see, examples of buttons that are actually made of gold, made of course, silver, which is more, it's the cousin, if you will, to gold. And then you do have buttons that were made, and these were, I would say, more modern buttons, because this would have been after the Victorian and Georgian era, that were occasionally made from platinum. But, coin buttons have been around for a very long time. And the only reason they're called coin buttons is because they look like coins. But yes, I just wanted to make you aware that button was not of a knight, but that was the same button. I even went back and looked at that entire video that you commented on, just to make sure I did not miss anything. This is such a sassy, cool button, in my opinion, because it has sort of like this resin over the top of this metal button in the center. And look at how decorative this button is. This is one that I need to research, because it might be from one of the fashion houses. They may have ordered this button, because that's how well made it is. And this is the back. And the funny thing is, you see that line right there? It tells you that it was poured into a mold. So this is just a really curious button, in my opinion, and I definitely want to learn more about it. And Art Nouveau, the arts and craft era, there were all sorts of eras when it came to buttons. This is definitely of that Art Nouveau, the swirly floral fauna, naturalistic. I could go on and on about, that era. And then it has this pin back shank, as its shank on the back. And you can see that this portion of the button right here was applied to this backing, and then it was, a machine probably pressed it all together. So also looking at the construction of buttons and thinking to yourself, wow, someone, meaning whether it be an individual or a company, a manufacturer, went through a lot of trouble in some cases to make these buttons. If you think about it and you go back to your closet and look at the last 5 things that you purchased, like the most recent, that have buttons on them. And you will not see this quality of work. You will not see the time and effort that was put into these buttons on modern day buttons. They just don't do it anymore. Even if you were to go to, which, we all can have a moment of silence for Joanna Fabrics. You go to a Joanna Fabrics, the number of buttons that were, molded plastic buttons, and yes, sometimes they would have, other variations. It still would equal the quality of the vintage and antique buttons. So when I have time, opportunity, desire, I will replace buttons on my clothing at times with buttons that are like this, simply because it ups the ante in your garment, gives it a different look. Actually, let me put a few of these on here. These are orange buttons. Orange, just like purple, really hard to find good quality vintage buttons in that color. Here are 3 examples. This one is delicious. It looks like, I don't know, a dreamsicle or some sort of yummy candy. And then you have the one in the middle, which is stunning within itself. And you have this one that's on the end with that fiery center. And these are the shanks, metal brass shank, and the other have 2 different styles but kind of similar, applied shanks. And also the one in the center, you can see that brown swirl, like it almost reminds you of a marble. Just stunning. Super stunning. Out of the 3, yes, this is my favorite for obviously shanked reasons, and also I love how thick it is. So I'm going to stop here, and we have one more video probably coming up where we will review the other buttons that I kept in the collection. And we'll finish up this part of that. I guess I'm trying not to call it a series, but I think that I ended up making a series, even though I had no intention of doing so. So let me know, out of all the buttons that you've seen, what are your favorites? And don't tell me you only had one favorite, because you must have had at least 2 or 3. And also just say hi. I really would appreciate it. And super important is also, please remember to subscribe to the channel and to share the videos with others, whether they be in your Facebook groups, your private craft groups, whatever. Just let them know there's this weird lady, but hopefully you think I'm nice, and I am more than willing to share information, and I would love to learn from you all as well. So any questions you have, any feedback, any additional information on anything you see or saw in past videos, that would be awesome. So thank you so much. Take care, enjoy your day, and keep on learning about buttons and sharing the information.